It's time for the VRChat TikTok Awards again, and this time I let you guys choose my outfit. I tallied up every word that was mentioned or upvoted in the comments, and with that I found references that combined as many parts of it as I could, and then took those references and drew up a dress that I could start to find assets with. I found a few dresses that put together some parts of what was chosen, but not any single dress that pieced it all together. So instead, I ended up going with this lower portion of this dress and the upper portion of this dress. So with everything picked out, it's time to combine these two pieces together for my outfit for the VRChat TikTok Awards for 2025. So after removing all of the original clothes on my model, the dress was too big. So I pressed G so I could move it, and pressed Z to keep it on the Z scale so I can move it down. And then I needed to move it forward, so I pressed G and Y. So if you need to make some small adjustments to clothing, sculpt mode isn't necessarily incorrect, and it is a lot easier to use for a beginner. However, for more intense sculpting, I really recommend using edit mode instead. Once I've hidden all the parts that I will not be sculpting at the moment, including the armature, I noticed that the dress was transparent, so under the material properties, I scrolled down and set the blend mode to opaque. So to sculpt this in edit mode rather than sculpt mode, I press tab to go into edit mode, and there's a little circle at the top, and once it's blue, it's enabled. Now if I click a vertex, the entire mesh will move. However, if I scroll in, that circle gets smaller and I can manipulate the mesh as closely as I need to depending on how small that circle is. So I want to go over again what I just said very quickly, a lot slower. So I just imported Panda Base, and with a bikini on it, of course, so I don't have to have blur covering up everything. And I imported, after that, a shirt that is for Zenpia's ZenFit base. And obviously, Panda's is in an A pose, while this shirt is in a T pose. So first, let me click on the armature of the shirt so I can press G and then Y to move it to fit the base, and G and Z to move it up. And then now that the shoulders are in the right spot, I'm going to go into pose mode, and I can, to make it a little easier, show the armature of the body, and if the shoulders need lined up, then I can move them a little closer. So there's this butterfly button right here, X, and that will keep it symmetrical, so if I move one side, it'll move the other. So I'm going to move the shoulders down to match it a little bit better, and then move down to the arms. And what I'm looking for is this right here. I want the little joint in the middle to match. So I moved it down and then pressed S to make it bigger. And then I'm going to do the same here. I'm looking for this little wrist bone right here. The little, not bone, joint. The joint doesn't have to be the same size, but I'm looking for it to be in about the same spot. And I'm doing this, you don't have to, but it makes the sculpting a lot easier. And now that I've done that, I'm going to apply as rest pose. And since the shirt doesn't have any fizz bones on it, I'm going to go ahead and, I skipped over this really fast in the tutorial in the last video, so I'm going to explain this a little slower. So I deleted all of the bones, and some comments said, how'd you do that? Well, I pressed tab to go into edit mode on the armature, which made them look like this. And then I press A to select them all, and then hit the delete key and delete the bones. So now the shirt still has an armature on it, but technically does not have any bones. And this seems stupid. However, it keeps it as an armature on to merge. So if it were just the mesh, you'll have to excuse the other one here. It's because there's a bikini, obviously. But if it were just the mesh with no armature, this wouldn't even be an option here. But because I kept it in the armature, it's armature.002, so I'm going to select that. And because there's no bones for it to attach to, it's asking, well, where do you want to attach? So that's when you select merge all bones. So I merge the armatures, and now the shirt is part of the body. Obviously, it's not lined up, so this is where the sculpting comes in handy. So the easier way to do this is in sculpt mode, if I turn the radius up, I can just click, right? But then you'll end up with really lumpy, not so great curves. So instead, in edit mode, you could press tab to go into edit mode quicker. So I'll swap back and forth very quickly by pressing tab. So what I need is this little circle here to be blue. If it's not blue, then just one vertex will move. But if it is blue, it's enabled. And then, okay, sorry, by default, it'll look something like this. So if I press G with this enabled, the entire mesh will move. However, press G and then scroll in. You won't see it for a while, but keep scrolling and this little circle will get smaller and smaller. And if I play around with this, you'll see that the smaller the circle is, the more leverage I have on moving that smallest portion of the mesh. So if I had it super, super, super small, I could still, I pressed G twice on accident, I could still move just that one vertex. But the more I scroll out, the more vertexes get applied to this movement. So I've kind of gotten an idea of how big I need the circle to be, but the idea is you don't want to have it too small. You'll think that you want it to be as accurate as possible, but what you're doing then is creating lumps to try and make it as close as possible. See, I just created a lump right there. So instead, try and have it as big as you can. Something like that, maybe? Nope, a little bit smaller, because I moved that top portion of the shoulder and I didn't need to. So I'm going to move it in just so the shoulder doesn't get moved. And instead, that whole flap gets moved instead of having to do that several times. So I'm going to move down. I'll come back to the sleeves later. And I can't see inside of here, so I can press the X-ray so I can see it better. And when I go back into edit mode, I'll see all of the vertices. It's also in solid instead of material. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know which one it is, but if I hold Z and go down, material preview instead, so it'll be easier to see. So the boobs is a big one, so I'm gonna select a large portion of the boobs, press G and then Z to go up. See how it's leaving like a huge spot right here, and I kind of want it to drag more. That's where I would make it bigger. And then I'd come to the front and I need to pull it out, so I'd click on a vertex over here, G and then X, but then it's moving the armpit right here, so I need to scroll in a bit more. Now that that's been explained a bit better, the rest of the video is just going to be a time lapse showing how I added the outfit to my avatar. So make some popcorn, sit back and enjoy. So that was how I added my outfit for the VRChat TikTok Awards for 2025. I hope you enjoyed and you learned something from it. Also, I'm so sorry that the reveal is in portrait. This was initially just going to be a TikTok, and then I decided to take things slower for a YouTube video. Don't forget to check out the stream for the awards to see if I won. And in case you missed it before, I really appreciate you guys nominating me in the first place. It really is an honor to be there at all. Thank you.